We're here today with Bruce Cowper, co-founder of Sector, who is speaking at Sector 2017 about GDPR. Now, Bruce, there's only 6 months left before this thing comes into effect. Can you explain for those who haven't been tracking it exactly what it is and why they should be worried?
Good question. There's certainly a lot of confusion as to what the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, is from people around the world. In a nutshell, GDPR is all about standardizing the privacy rights of European Economic Zone residents. So that means the European Union plus the Nordic countries, essentially. And so it provides a number of rights for individuals, which include things like the right to ask what an organization has in terms of data that they hold and how it's used and what it's used for, those sorts of things. The right to make corrections to that data, the right to erase that data, and that's commonly known as the right to be forgotten. And then the right to data portability, so in other words, being able to move data from one organization to another. Second part is that it makes the organization accountable for supporting those privacy rights. For example, with gaining consent for what data is collected in a transparent way. For things like protecting that data, for breach notifications, and essentially going beyond things like the technology to helping or making sure an organization has the right people and processes in place to support the requirements. And if those organizations don't adhere to the requirements of the GDPR, it actually introduces measures like fines and others that make sure that those rights are adhered to. So in essence, GDPR has some teeth associated with it.
Now, a lot of companies in North America might be thinking, well, this doesn't affect me, maybe I don't have an office over in the EU. Should they still be worried?
GDPR applies to any organization, both public sector and private sector, that provides goods or services to European residents. So it doesn't matter where those organizations are in the world or where that data is in the world. It also covers employees, and that's a piece that a lot of organizations miss. And there's one more really large piece to it, which is a downstream data processor. And while the requirements of the GDPR may not be as stringent for a data processor as for a data controller, those organizations do have a responsibility for GDPR compliance as well. So GDPR is typically a lot broader than many organizations think.
Okay, so there's obviously a lot to cover for companies as they prepare for this regulation. Very briefly, can you outline the 3 top things that companies should be doing if they haven't tackled this at all yet?
The first thing an organization needs to do is understand what data they have, for example, who has access to it, what it's being used for. So data discovery is the first thing that an organization will need to do. The second piece is really look at how that data is managed and maintained. I would say the third thing is organizations need to understand things like the people and process requirements of GDPR and not rely on the technology. And things like documentation, etc., is going to be a really important part of that.
Excellent. Okay, GDPR comes into effect next May, ready or not. Bruce, thanks so much for walking us through.
My pleasure. Thank you.